Ingrid Winterbach is one of South Africa's most significant writers. She writes in the Afrikaans, and only 3 of her novels are available in English, which is perhaps no surprise. But one of them, the Book of Happenstance, is available this month thanks to Open Letter Books. It's translated by the author along with Dirk Winterbach. And here, I'm going to break it down for you. Here are 5 of the things you should need to know about the Book of Happenstance. Number 1, it is a curious hybrid of a thriller and of a dictionary. Our protagonist is Helena. She's a South African middle-aged woman who has come to Durban to work on a project with one Theo Verwy at the Museum of Natural History. She's a lexicographer, and the project is to archive and curate underused Afrikaans words. We learn from the very first sentence that Verwy is found dead in his office about 7 months after Helena begins working with him, and she is the one to discover his body. So, just a few months after Helena begins work in Durban, her home is burglarized and her collection of shells is stolen and her home is defiled. She is unhappy with the police's muted effort to investigate this, and so she takes some of this investigation upon herself. So between the suspense of those stories, we have a lot of the qualities of a thriller playing out in this novel. At the same time, we have a lot of the qualities of a dictionary. This is a word-centered first-person narrator who is slowly falling in love with her boss as they break down the origins of strange and curious words, as well as the parts of the words. There are pages of this novel that feel like a litany of language, of words and word parts. The balance between these 2 odd genres sitting next to each other creates a tension in the prose that is compelling and altogether strange. Okay, here's the second thing you need to know about the Book of Happenstance, and that it is very hard to like Helena. She is a cold woman, and as her ex-husband describes her, one of a narrow emotional register. It seems that her greatest moment of emotional resonance is in her connection to these shells, and so by having them stolen, she feels particularly wounded. But especially when we're caught up in her first-person voice, being pulled along with her obsessions and her strangely stagnant emotional tone. For me, at least, it was hard to love her, hard to like her, hard to even cheer her on. And this is strange for a first-person novel, which almost by default, compels the reader to feel empathy for this particular protagonist. For me, it took a long time to warm up to her, and I definitely had to take frequent breaks from the reading of this to make sure I could catch my breath. The number 3 thing you need to know about the Book of Happenstance, and closely related to my difficult relationship with Helena, is that the prose itself is brilliant, but very tense, even brittle. While many first-person novels give the reader some amount of perspective, even outside the vantage point of the character we're navigating the story with, the Book of Happenstance felt very closed circuit. We are absolutely consumed into Helena's vantage, and truly, this is a brilliant tactic by Winterbach. It is absolutely well suited to this story of obsession and of loss. It is absolutely appropriate, and at the same time, I struggled, just as I did with my time with Helena. Even with the prose itself, I felt very hungry, even craving for moments of release, of revelation, of catharsis that never quite came. Which is not to say that the prose is unlikable. Again, it truly is brilliant, but we sit humming at that tension for a very long time. The number, what am I on, 4? The number 4 thing you need to know about the Book of Happenstance is that it appeals to my scientific sensibility. And we're doing this project at the Museum of Natural History. She spends her lunch hours in a cafeteria full of scientists, and she gets very intrigued about the origins of life, what makes a life, how did life evolve, how did consciousness evolve, how did conscience evolve. These are the questions that she's asking these other scientists and getting very fascinating responses back. It is how Helena is trying to navigate a life that she isn't fully able to understand. As fascinating as these questions of life and its evolution are for the story at hand, it is also simply interesting. And for the scientist in me, I found myself getting a lot of momentum through this text simply by wanting to know a lot of the answers to a lot of these questions that Helena is posing to these scientists. And finally, the last thing that I want to tell you about the Book of Happenstance, it is a book of subtlety and of unexpected wit. This is a grand conceptual novel full of philosophy. Its implications, its weight often comes in the quietest and most unexpected moments. It is a novel of nouns that carry great weight. Even in these long, long moments of tension and of a character that I often found extremely unlikable, there are moments of wit and humor that do provide a bit of release, even if I wanted more of it. And and altogether, this is an absolutely compelling and fascinating book, one that is difficult for me to love, but that has an energy that is absolutely unparalleled in any book that I can think of. It's not quite like anything else in its strangeness and in its intrigue, in its ability to pull from the genres of as diverse as thrillers and of dictionaries of even scientific texts. Ultimately, the Book of Happenstance is nothing but itself, and for that I am a very admiring reader.